Good evening. Thank you all so much for coming out. On behalf of the Office of the Dean of Students and Mayfield Living Learning Program, I'd like to welcome you to Examining Education Reform with Chris Barbic. This is the second year the Mayfield Living Learning Program has sponsored a speaker. We're moving in the direction of creating an entire speaker series around the good efforts of students. The Mayfield program is entirely student-run, student-governed, student-led. The ideas that have come out of the Mayfield program over the last couple of years have been nothing short of remarkable. And looking forward to the introduction of the Commons, we believe that the Mayfield program and other living learning communities on campus will continue to exert more influence as students look for ways to continue the learning process into their sophomore, junior, and senior years. On that note, I'd like to introduce Brian Sparrow, the president of the Mayfield Council and a third-year Mayfielder? Second-year Mayfielder. Yeah. Brian, please introduce.
So basically, I'm just here to introduce the reason all you guys came here tonight, and that's Chris Barbic. I know you guys have probably read up before coming here, seeing how many accolades you've had, and I just really like to read off a few of them. So basically, Chris graduated in 1992 from Vanderbilt with a double major in HOD and English. He did Teach for America for 6 years, and in 1995 was named Houston's Outstanding Teacher under 29 years of age, which is an awesome award, so we're very, very glad to have him here already. In 1995, he started Project Yes, which was a middle school charter program. It began with 58 kids. Him and a bunch of parents got together, and they were frustrated with the way that kids from elementary school to middle school would start getting mixed up with the wrong things, and kids who were doing well in elementary school would end up dropping out of school or doing other things that they shouldn't be doing in middle school. YES stands for Youth Engaged in Service, and it's based on a rigorous academic curriculum as well as a service-oriented organization. In 1998, Chris started the high school, and it changed it from Project Yes to Yes Preparatory School. He did this on public funds. This is a charter school. It's based completely off of public funds from the city of Houston as well as some grant money. In 2000, after just 2 years of being a high school, it was named Houston's top performing school. And today, he has 5 campuses, about 2,100 students, and he's been in Newsweek's top 100 high schools, or top 100 schools, I guess, for the last 2 years, and was just recently named Houston Press's best high school in Houston. So after, 7-8 years of being in existence, they've already been able to accomplish this much. And this is even more amazing considering the students at this high-performing high school are not really the typical students that you would expect at a high-performing high school. 80% of the students are economically disadvantaged, 95% are Hispanic or African American, 86% are first-generation college-bound, and most enter one year back in English and in math. Now, this is already amazing, and due to this, Chris has garnished a few accolades. In 2000, he was given the Do Something Brick Award by the Do Something Foundation. 2001, he was elected to the Presidential Commission on Excellence in Hispanic Education. In 2004, he received the Gleitzman Citizen Activist Award. Past winners have been Al Gore and Ralph Nader, so this is a really, really big award. And in 2006, he became the youngest person ever to win the Peabody Distinguished Alumnus Award. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Chris Barbic.
Thanks for having me back. It's always nice to come back to Nashville and Vanderbilt. So what I want to do to start is just to kind of get a sense of who's in the audience. We're going to play a little game. So it's called Stand Up. And stand up and kind of don't do it. Stand up if you're a senior at Vanderbilt right now. Okay, you sit down. Juniors. Okay. Sophomores. Any freshmen? All right. Okay, good. So that gives me kind of a sense. Are there any grad students? I guess I can let you guys out. Any grad students? Okay. Excellent. Excellent. stand up if you think that educational reform should be the single most important issue on the 08 political campaign. You think that's the biggest issue facing the country right now? Ed reform. Okay. Sit down. Stand up if you think that reforming public education is a civil rights issue. Civil rights issue. Okay, sit down. Stand up if you thought about teaching in an inner city school after you graduated from here. Okay. Sit down. Stand up if Jeremy, did you see all this? Stand up if you have applied to Teach for America. Or a core member, even better. Okay. Stand up if you've gotten into Teach for America. Okay. So you guys are seniors and you just got in. Are you guys going to Houston?
I am.
Excellent. Okay. We'll talk after. Okay. Well, before I start, I guess two things. One, there's serious hope for all of you. I don't know what your college track record has been, but when I got a call to say that I was a distinguished alumnus, I actually thought one of my friends from college playing a prank on me. And because the only thing I distinguished myself while I was at Vanderbilt was probably an exit in, and I'm not sure if the old direction is still across the street, but those are my distinguishment advantages. For those of you that are making every moment to enjoy yourself in school, that's a good thing. There's hope for you after college. So the gobs of cash are spending and going so many ways. So what I want to do a little bit is talk about a few things, and then I want to definitely leave lots of room for questions. So I put this up here because this is basically the starting point for everything that we try to do. It is really the hypothesis that when we started in 1995, we tried to set out to prove, and we're trying to continue to prove. And basically, it's pretty simple. If you go into a low-income community and you provide kids in those neighborhoods with the same thing they did at a great private school. I didn't do a stand-up for raise your hand if you went to a private school in K-12 or high school. Or a great suburban public school. The kids in the neighborhoods that we really want to serve would do just as well, but in a lot of cases, what they don't have is access to either one of those things. So obviously, this is a loaded question, and the answer to all questions at our school is yes. So we will move along. Quick overview, talk a little bit about the problems, give you just a quick background on who we are, talk a little bit about how we think we've achieved our results. That's always a question we get when visitors come out and go, what's the secret sauce? So we'll do our best to describe the secret sauce. And then lessons that we've learned. So we've been at this personally since '92, so for about 15 years. And as a school, now a school system, we're going to celebrate our 10th year. And so we try to document. We screwed up a lot of things, made a lot of mistakes, but those are all opportunities to learn, right? So we try to document what those things are so we can start to share those out with the broader ed reform community, and then finish up kind of on the impact that we think we're having now and would like to have in Houston. So I know that these numbers are very specific to Houston. Is there anybody from Houston in here besides the folks that are here? Okay. So I think as much as this is Houston specific, you could probably these numbers probably apply to most large urban areas in the country. And there's a lot of stuff up here and a lot of numbers, but basically you see the headline. In Houston, if you're in 6th grade at HISD, we won't even talk about ethnic or socioeconomics, but just 6th grader period, you have about a 10% chance of finishing college. This is the fourth, rumored to be the third. I just heard someone on the Southwest Airlines flight saying overtook Chicago as the third largest city in the country. But that's a lot of people that aren't going to college in a big place, right? If you are Hispanic or African American, the numbers are even lower. So you think about Houston for a second, which really I think is kind of a gateway into what the rest of the country is going to look like over the next 10 to 20 years. And you really risk creating what you see in third world countries, which is a huge group of people who don't have access to college, never finished college, a small group of people, a wealthy group of people controlling a lot of the resources, a lot of the power, and then this huge middle to underclass. And if you're a history major, anytime you have that happening for a long time, it creates instability, and it usually leads to revolution if you're in a lot of other places. And no one in here wants that. The kind of revolution we want to create is much different kind, where we turn these numbers upside down. And so, there's a lot of people in Houston who argue that Houston looks like a third world country right now. And if you look at kind of how education impacted political leadership in the city, just lots of different thought makers in Houston, you can probably make a pretty good argument. So this is what we're up against in Houston. We track the the 6th grade to high school graduate numbers. That's actual data. Houston Independent School District does not track kids after they graduate, so we just apply national averages for Hispanics, African Americans, and whites in terms of college entrance, and then how many of those kids finish college after 5 years, and that's how we came up with the last two columns. So, pretty bleak picture. And it was these numbers, and they weren't packaged and weren't quite as pretty, that we really started looking at when we started thinking about why we needed to create Yes. So when I got placed as a core member in Houston, I was teaching on the east side of town, which is the oldest Hispanic community in the Houston area. And what I saw, as Brian mentioned in the intro, were a lot of great kids in 6th grade going off to a local middle school and just watching the wheels fall off. And these were kids who had great families. They had serious aspirations about what they wanted to do with themselves. They were talking about college. And the problem was there wasn't a place, a middle school and then a high school, for those kids to really achieve the kind of things that they wanted to achieve. And so when you started putting these numbers in front of the parents, you can imagine what their reaction was. And one thing I want to make sure, and one of the reasons I want to talk to you guys tonight, is there's a lot of myths out there that I want to try and bust up tonight. One myth is that a lot of parents in low-income communities don't care about where their kids go to school. That's a complete myth. If you look at the neighborhood where I was working in and still working, and there's families who literally walked to this country for opportunities for themselves and more importantly for their kids. And so those parents very much care about the kind of place they send their kids to school. So when you place these numbers in front of them and talk about it, these parents will get enraged because the story that's not up here is those kids that in the high school graduate column. So just paint a quick picture for you. So Austin High School, which is the school a lot of our kids would go to if they weren't at Yes, there's about a 50% dropout rate at Austin High School. But the kids that are still there, so you have kids in the senior class, about 13% take the SAT. So 13% of the senior class is even in the hunt to go to college, right? And if you think about that 13%, that's probably the cream of the crop of that class. And those are the kids who figured out on their own how to register for the SAT, how to get themselves to the SAT. Maybe they did some prep for the SAT, maybe not, but just that alone, that's a pretty big deal. So that top 13%, that cream of the crop, average SAT score for that group is about an 850. So, everyone gets so hung up on the high school dropout numbers, and yeah, that's huge. But the other story is even the kids that are staying in school and doing everything they were told to, those are kids who played by the rules, they didn't join a gang, they didn't do drugs, they didn't get pregnant, they went all the way through K through 12, they signed up for the SAT, they took the SAT, 850. Those kids aren't going to be able to get into any sort of competitive school. And they did everything that they were told to do. So those kids are getting just as robbed, if not worse, than the kids who've opted out of the system altogether. And so either way you slice it, when you see this and you start talking to people in the community about what's going on and what the prospects are, people get fired up. And I see some of you guys kind of, these, you're ready to sort of charge into battle right now, and that's awesome. And so, those parents were mad. We carpooled down to an HISD school board meeting in 95, 300 parents in a room kind of like this, and we had a student get up and speak and talk about why she wanted her and her classmates to say yes for 7th and 8th grade. And she turned around and said, and these are all the people that support this idea. And the whole auditorium just stood up. And you saw these school board members' jaws hit the ground. It was awesome. And I think at the time, when they approved our program, it was more just to kind of get us out of the way so we could go off and do our thing. And that's what we did. We quietly did our thing. In 3 years, we built our program up into a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade middle school. In 98, we became a charter school. How many of you know what a charter school is? Are you guys familiar with it? Okay, so public school, we operate primarily on public funds, and it was, the law was really written to kind of try and create some competition within the public education system. So since 98, that's how we've been operating. And just to kind of a quick background, so the first campus. So the first campus we started in the middle of the parking lot. So in 1998, we wrote the charter. In March, the charter was approved. In September, we had to open school. Right? So we knew we were going to leave the district. I borrowed $1 million. We set up a nonprofit corporation. I borrowed $1 million at 12.5% interest. For those of you that aren't financially interested, that's not going good. And so purchased these buildings, ordered them. We had 11 modular buildings, and I was telling some big story earlier today. So about 3 weeks before the buildings were supposed to come to Houston and get dropped off, we still didn't have a place to put them. So we had kids, we had some teachers, we had some modular buildings, but we didn't have anywhere to put the modular buildings. So I started getting these calls from Mr. Barbic, we're about to take these big buildings on these big trucks. You need to tell us where to put them. And so I saw this article in the newspaper, and this guy just bought this huge building downtown called the El Mercado del Sol. And he basically bought from the city of Houston and spent everything he had on this building. And he was talking about how he's going to turn this thing into lots and do all these great things. He was going to be part of downtown revitalization. And so I saw this article and I was like, that guy needs money. And you know what? I can probably pay him a little bit if they let me drop these buildings in the middle of this parking lot. He had a 9-acre parking lot that wasn't being used. So I knocked on this guy's door on Monday morning and sort of pitched my plan. And I think you just saw how desperate I was. You felt sorry for me. I let us carve out a little acre in the parking lot and called up the modular company. We dropped the buildings. We got it set up. We got the school started. As Brian mentioned, in the second year we were the top performing school in the state. And I tell that story for 2 reasons. One is because a lot of you guys right now are in a place where you're trying to think about what it is you're going to do when you graduate. And there's always a tug of, follow your heart, pay off school loans. Follow your heart, pay off school loans. That's a real tug, right? And I would say that, I would ask really kind of how much, what are you willing to do to really pursue your dreams? Because I bet every single one of you has, great plans for the ways in which you'd like to change the world. And a lot of folks sitting in your shoes have felt the same way and have chosen not to do that. And I think the reason is because to do those things is hard, right? It takes a lot of will and it takes a lot of risk. And fortunately for us, we were blessed and those risks paid off. And now it's led to 5 schools. So we have 5 campuses right now. We're serving 2,100 kids across Houston. You can kind of see the demographics of the kids we're trying to serve. Our goal is to go into the lowest income communities in Houston and set up schools and give kids a legitimate path to go to college. And that's really what it is we're trying to do. So kind of just talked about that. That's our core purpose for our organization, kind of our values, sort of the things that we believe in, results. It's all about people. It's all about relationships, and we'll get back to this in kind of the lessons learned and really trying to create social justice in the Houston area. So how are we reforming education? There's a lot up here, and I'm not going to talk about every single one of these boxes. But what I do want to talk about is that middle yellow column. So if you were to talk about, well, what is yes? It's these things. And I think, folks will come and visit, and what they try and do is try and take one of those rectangles out and just do that one thing and say, okay, we're going to be servicing the community, and by doing service in the community, all of our kids are going to go to college, and we're going to be a great school. And they ignore every other box up here. I think what's important to remember, and what we've learned, is that it's all these boxes working together as part of the system that makes it work. If you just pull one of these out and do college counseling, the without the other things, it's not going to work. If you pull these things out and just go to school on without talking about what that extra time is going to do, it's not going to work. If you just pull out one box and do college prep without any support, your kids are probably going to fail most of the classes. Okay, so I think the important thing to understand is that it's a lot of these things working in concert. So our kids go to school long. 7:30 to 4:30, our kids are in class. We go to school one Saturday a month. That's our service program. So one of the things we're really trying to instill in the kids at Yes isn't just you need to go to college because when you graduate, it's going to create financial stability for you and your family. That's important. But the other thing that you need to recognize is that college degree, you're really to take that back to your community, and with a critical mass of other folks who have a college degree from the same neighborhood, that's how we're going to make change. And so the way we try and instill that in the kids at a very young age is through a service program where we're trying to get the kids out, doing service in the neighborhood, seeing the kind of impact that those opportunities can have. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I think one of the things we're really proud of is that 5 of our alumni who graduated from Yes and graduated from college are now back at Yes as full-time teachers. And that's, I can't tell you how proud of all of us to see kids who we used to teach now back in college. It's pretty cool. It's pretty funny the first time that you make them call you by your first name. They call you Mr. And really kind of seeing them at the first happy hour with all the teachers. Jesus, I got back when we were in school. So it's pretty funny to kind of welcome them into the fold. They get to see behind the music version of Yes Press, which is kind of fun for them and for us. I think so. There's a few things I want to touch on up here. I think one of them is the size of the school. So those of you that raise your hand, so you went to a private school. How many of you went to a private school where you had 2,500 kids in your high school? That was the size of your private school. Nobody, right? Well, there's a reason for that, because 2,500 student schools don't work. And I bet your parents paid a pretty penny to send you there, right? And there were things that were expected to go along with that tuition. It was access to teachers. It was relationships. It was a sense of community. It was rigor. All the things that you can't do when you have 2,500 kids in your school. If you look at most good private schools, it's about 100 to 120 kids per class. Raise your hand if the high school you went to, private school, had about 100 to 120 kids in each class. Yep. Okay. And I bet if you ask these guys, they didn't all go to the same school. I mean, private schools figured it out, right? It's 100 to 120 is the magic number. Public schools, guess what? It works there too. All right. So we really try to pay attention to creating a school size where you can create the kind of relationships that it takes for kids to feel like it's part of the community. You get to know each other. You get to know the adults. That's hugely important. The 6 through 12. So most schools, and you guys probably went to, you go to middle school or you go to junior high, and then you go to high school. Well, one of the things that we really try to do is integrate the 6 through 12th grade. And what it does is it creates an environment, we think, where the younger kids mix with the older students. The older students can really serve as role models for the younger kids. And it's not the middle school's over here and the high school's over here. Let's do everything we can to keep these guys away from each other. It's the middle and the high school are all part of the same campus. And let's mix these kids together as much as we can so the younger kids can learn from the older kids. The older kids can be the role models. And a lot of the enculturation that we try and do on campus and create the right culture, a culture of success, culture of achievement isn't just what kids hear from their teachers, but it's what they see the older kids in the school doing. When these 3 guys who were from here tonight went to Yes, when they were applying to college, when they found out they were going to school, when they were walking around talking to their friends about all the acceptance letters they got, there was a 6th and 7th grader probably, within earshot listening to that conversation. And what it does is it makes those things not just dreams, but it creates a sense of reality around. For a lot of these guys, they're the first ones in their family to go to college. And so the college trips, taking the kids out, our kids see about 25 college campuses before they start their seniors. We take them out west, we take them through the Midwest, we take them through the East Coast. James works in our admissions office here. We've known each other back when he was at Overland. We took a group of kids from Overland to see Overland. So we feel like it's really important for kids to see all different types of schools, not just ones in Houston, but ones outside the state, ones that are small, ones that are big, ones that have a religious religious affiliation, ones that don't, state schools, private schools. They need to see everything. Because for a lot of you guys, that's probably what you did. You went out, you applied to some schools, your parents showed you around, you visited some places, you got to see the campus before you applied. Guess what? Exactly that same question. Same access to the opportunity.
What was the college counselor to senior ratio?
And then personalized college counseling. How many of you went to a big public high school? What was the college counselor to senior ratio of your school? Did you know who your college counselors were? Did they know your name? Yeah, probably 200, 300 to 1. That's good. And who knows what those guys are doing? Schedules or luncheon duty or who the hell knows what. But they probably weren't college counseling. If they were, it was probably for the top 10 to 15% who was going to get into college, whether those counselors you're talking to them or not. And so what we've recognized is that for the students that we're working with, most of whose parents didn't go to college, and even if you did go to college, the application process and the financial aid process, when you need a PhD in that alone, just to figure out how the hell to get into school and get the money to do it. And so throw in not having gone to college, maybe not speaking the language, and again, the deck gets stacked against you. So what it is we want to try and do, create those opportunities and resources so that kids have access to that information, that knowledge. Our college counselor to kid rates about 25 to 1. And it's extra expense, and it's money that we have to go out and fundraise, but if your mission's college prep, then that mission has to guide where you get resources. And so we've chosen to put our resources in our college counselors, and then support through college. So our goal is not get kids into college. Okay, and then, hand them off to James and Brian and say, all right, guys, they're all yours now. Okay, our goal is that kids finish college. Okay, because again, we want our guys coming back to the neighborhood to make the neighborhood better. And so if they're coming back to the neighborhood and talking about how hard college was and how much it sucked and how much they hated it, I mean, that's powerfully dangerous for us. We need to come back to the neighborhood, talking about how much fun they're having and the great time college is and all the great stuff that they're learning and all the opportunities around that. And so we want to make sure that every kid finishes. We treat a kid not finishing college like dropping a touchdown pass or a Super Bowl. It's a huge deal. You can't let that happen. Right? And so again, once you make that part of your mission, then you have to put resources and a commitment around making sure it's not just, all right, guys, go to Stanford, go get them, or go to Vanderbilt, go get them. It's checking out and making sure that our kids are finishing. And so one way we do that is we administer our own scholarship. It's not a lot of money. It's like $1,000, $1,500, but we try and give every single kid a scholarship. And the reason that we do that is because it's tied to them giving back transcripts, grades, things like that. And they don't get the second payment as a scholarship. But you guys are they don't get the second payment as a scholarship unless they give us all those things, transcripts, how you're doing, progress report. Why? Because we want to make sure that we know exactly, as early as we possibly can, how well our kids are doing. Are they making the grades that they need to make? Are they doing the things that they need to do to make sure that they're successful? Are they tapping into the resources and the support systems at the university? Because this, that number I showed at the beginning of the slide, that's just as much higher ed problem as it is K through 12 problem. I think one of the things you guys are going to start to see in the next 5 to 10 years is a lot more accountability on colleges and universities for those numbers and how many people are finishing as there is on K through 12. And that's kind of the thing that nobody really wants to talk about right now is what sort of support's happening at the college level to make sure that every kid comes through and finishes. And there's a lot of resources here that some of you guys have probably already tapped into, as there are at other universities. So we want to make sure our kids are tapping into those first before we have to hop on a plane and come out here and make sure that they're doing it. And so, again, it's all those things working together as part of the system. That's the secret sauce. And whenever we spend 10 or 15 minutes kind of talking to somebody, so we'll get visitors out to the school, and they want to walk around, and they're like, oh, this is great. And then we're about to walk them out the door and show them the car, and they're like, so what is it? And then we tell them this, and they're disappointed. I mean, everybody wants the magic bullet. They want to know the quick fix, the easy way to make sure that kids get, well, it's not. It's just doing a lot of pretty practical things and being really committed. And you see the input, mission-driven, high-performing staff. right? So it's getting the right people who buy into these things and want to do whatever it takes. That's the motto of ES Prep, whatever it takes. And if you call teachers and you get their voicemail, and most of them it says, I'm not here right now, I'm doing whatever it takes for my students to reach four-year college university, right? That's what we're trying to do. And so it isn't, some whimsy computer program that, you throw kids in front of the computer, presto, you're going to get caught up 3 grade levels. It's not some, Whistles and bells technology solution. It's a lot of rolling up your sleeves, working in school size where you can build relationships, and just doing a lot of not very sexy stuff. And so those of you that apply to TFA, I hope I didn't just burst your bubble, but it's a lot of just down in the trenches, working hard, and it's the most rewarding work you'll ever do, but it's also the hardest. And those of you that raise your hand if you're a board member, I mean, you finish the day and you're mentally, physically, emotionally just wiped. And I don't know about you guys, but I can't count the number of times, my first year of teaching, I would get home at about 6:30 or 7, like, okay, so I sit down for a minute on the couch, and then boom, you wake up at 4:30 in the morning, you're still fully clothed, all the lights are on, and you're like, you're like, boom, right to lesson close the next day, maybe you took a shower, changed clothes, maybe you didn't. The kids keep trying that stuff, they're like, missing more of that same stuff yesterday. And so, I mean, maybe not as many times as I had to, but I'm sure we've all been there, right? But then you see those guys walk across the stage, and you see them finish school, and it's one of the most powerful things you can imagine. I'll tell one quick story, and then I'll stop for a minute. So we had a student named Walter Brioso who came to ES, and we've had kids here, Vanderbilt, Stanford, Yale, Columbia. I mean, you do great schools, right? And I'm definitely proud of those kids because those are some of the best universities in the world to get to. But a couple days ago, someone was asking me, who are you most proud of? Like, which alumni really stands out? And I had to answer Walter Brioso. And Walter didn't get into any of those schools. Walter went to Midwestern State, which is a small, tiny school in Wichita Falls, Texas. When Walter came to us, he was a 10th grader. He come from El Salvador. His English was absolutely horrible. The guy was the hardest working kid I've ever seen. And we knew that the amount of time Walter was putting into his studies, we just weren't seeing it in grades. So we went and took him to, we found a special ed consultant who tested Walter. And she ran through all these evaluations, and she's like, hey, I want you to come back with your dad. And I went with him to the ride. And we sat down, and this woman went through the eval. And basically she told this kid, I don't know what you're doing at this school. You're never going to go to college. Your best bet is to learn a trade and just start working. And she just ripped this kid right in front of the race. So we let her continue, and we walked out of the office. And I said, you know what, just go race everybody can do this. If you're willing to work hard, you can do anything you want. And so we did. And he stayed. It took him 6 years to finish high school. He cut back on the schedule. This kid just plowed.
First thing out of this kid's mouth.
And that didn't mean much.
If he says, but
first one is good, nice. Not fast. So we did. We went through we got the fax machine, and we just put a nice little note. We just want to keep you abreast of our problems. And that's worth waking up at 4:30 in the morning, and all the work that goes along with that. And Walter's still in school. He's been in college. This is his 5th year. He's probably got 2 more years to go. He's back in Houston now, so he left Wichita Falls. He's back in Houston, going to school there. And you know what? And it's been a twisty turning road, just like it was for high school. But I have no doubt in my mind that Walter Brioso will finish college. And so stories like that, I think, those of you that apply to TFA, and those of you that did TFA, and I'm sure all of you guys have your Walter Brioso stories. And it's just a blast. And I think I'm going to stop there. Let me see if these are just, results, brag, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I do want to hit a couple of these. So what have we learned? A lot of these I've already kind of talk about, but there's a couple I want to. So,
any educator, I mean, no educator.
First two, high expectations. So, if you walk and you talk to any teacher or you talk to any educator, I mean, no educator says, you know what we did this year is we set really low expectations. I mean, we set them down here. The kids, I mean, everyone says they set high expectations. Every school, even the lowest performing school and the worst teacher at the lowest performing school, they tell you they set high expectations. The difference is that the expectations get set here, and then 9 times out of 10, the kids come in around here, right? And then this is what happens. And everybody kind of meets somewhere in the middle, and you're left with a lot of mediocre students, right? And I think the difference between a low-performing school and a school that's mediocre and a high-performing school is that you've got a staff that recognizes. How many of you read Good? Have any of you guys read the book Good to Great by Julie Collins? Okay, there's a section called the Stockdale Paradox, confronting the brutal facts, right? So great schools confront the brutal facts. They know the kids are right here, and they know that they need to get them here, but they don't do this. They go right down where the kids are, and they work their butts off to make sure that by the time those kids leave, whether it's 5th grade or 8th grade or 12th grade, whatever the school is, that those kids are at that mark. And they don't meet them in the middle, and they all celebrate because everyone's meeting, right? And it takes a special kind of person to do that. So the expectations, you have to set them, you have to know what they are, and that's a great start. But the question is, what are you going to do when everybody in the class comes in here, or everybody in the school comes in here? Are you going to do this, or are you going to come down and do whatever it takes to make sure those kids are back up where you want them to be, or where you know they need to be? A lot of our, that's the difference between a high-performing school and a low.
Why they stay at yes.
People we talked about and how important those relationships are. A lot of our students need those relationships, and that's the difference between why they stay at yes and why they don't. I was just at one of our campuses the other day. We just started a new school in a partnership with HISD. I sat down with 15 kids and I said, so how's it going? Do you like it? We have 6th graders on a high school campus, so we have 130 6th graders on a 9 through 12 school, 2,100 kids. I wanted to make sure they weren't getting stuffed in lockers or got picked on while they were there. And these kids were loving it. I mean, they loved it. And I asked them, why do you like coming to yes? And across the board, I love my teachers. My teachers care about me. It's hard. I know they care. It's a relationship. That's why they're there. I mean, algebra is algebra. I mean, it can make you so excited. World history is world history. You can't go back and change it. I mean, what makes it exciting and fun is the person up in front of the class, bringing that stuff to life and building those relationships. Talked about school size. I think the rest of it do pretty much hit. So I think I'll stop there and see if we have time for questions. I think we have plenty of time. So hopefully you guys have some.
I know you talked a lot about your teachers are working crazy hours and they're really
Well, I think before that even.
So what kind of support systems has yes put in place to support teachers?
That's a great question.
We've done some
I think before that even.
How we philosophically look at the teaching profession.
Sorry.
So I think that
before we've done some things, but I think even before that is just how we philosophically look at the teaching profession.
Special ed teachers.
So I think that the days of someone going in and being a teacher for 20 or 30 years, I think those days are done. I mean, my mom has been a special ed teacher for 32 years. She's going to retire next year. She's worked in 3 school districts to retire adult career. I think that those days are done. And the reason I think that is because if you look at any other industry, no one stays in the same job at the same company for more than 4 or 5 years. Even if they're at the same company, they're doing something different. And so if we're going to attract ambitious, smart, really awesome people, I mean, I don't want someone that wants to be a 6th grade math teacher for 30 years. I mean, if someone came in and said, I want to do this same thing for 30 years, I mean, we wouldn't even hire that person, right? So I think step one is, how are we thinking about that teacher? We think about it in terms of 5 or 6. If we can keep somebody for 5 or 6 years, that's a win for us. And so that sort of end in mind dictates how we do everything in our teaching, in our recruiting process, in our hiring process, in our training process. So we have a pre-service training. We're actually applying to the state right now to certify our own teachers. So we do 40 hours of pre-service. We have 3 full-time instructional coaches. We have a cohort group of about 15 first-year teachers. They're on a 3-week cycle of pre-observation meeting, full observation, post-observation follow-up. So we have first an instructional coach in the classroom. There's a dean of instruction at every campus in the classroom. And they have a mentor teacher who's kind of like the here's how you use a copy machine, here's how you fill out a video type person. So that person's in the classroom. They have a department head in the classroom. The school director's in their classroom. And then I try and be on every campus at least one day a week. So they're not just those of you that have taught, core member, how many times were folks in your classroom that you have? And they're not just visiting, but actually in there watching you teach, giving you feedback on your teaching. Yeah, other than TFA. Oh yeah, and if they're TFA, they have their TFA PD too. So non-TFA folks in your classroom. Yes. So these guys are getting probably like one visit or two visits a day. And so it's very much collaborative, people working together. It's not, I'm going to shut my door, do whatever the hell I want, type of thing, which is how it works in most. And so there's a lot of support. And then, a lot of these guys, they're out drinking beers together after work. It's, hanging out on the weekends. Some of them are roommates. Some of them are married. So it's very much, there's a saying that Red Auerbach used to have. He used to be on the Celtics. And he said, if you're watching Celtic, it's not just a job, it's a lifestyle. And working at Yes Prep, going to Yes Prep, being a student at Yes Prep, it's a lifestyle choice. Your whole world changes, and your support group becomes important. And it's intense, which is why I think teachers can probably only do it for about 6 or 7 years. It would be like a doctor doing a whole career in the ER. You just get wiped out and can't do it. And we recognize that. But we also recognize that if we're going to take the kids that we're working with and get them caught up and on track to go to college, it's going to take that sort of intensity day in and day out for them to be able to reach that goal. So, I don't want to sound like kind of chew people up and spit them out because it's a lot more friendly and fun than that. But, we definitely work hard. Here and then cover.
And what's the cost that you pay? $1,500 for work kit.
That's a great question. So we get $6,500 first aid. And the local school gets about $1,500 more per kid than we receive. So we have to fundraise that difference. And then what's the killer is we don't get any money for facilities. So if you're a public ISD or public school, you go out and pass bars, you get tax dollars for those schools. For us, any facility that we build, we have to go out and raise all that money for class. So to kind of put some real dollars on it. So when we start a new school, we start with just 6th grade, and we add a grade year up to 12. So from that 6th grade class becoming seniors, that school runs an operating deficit of about $2.5 million over 7 years. We go out and fundraise to get that school started, and then once it's fully enrolled, it can sustain itself operationally even though we get less money per kid. Facility-wise, we've earmarked about $10 million per campus to build a school. So if someone asks, how much does it cost for a Yes Prep campus? About $12.5 million over 7 years.
So we go 7:30 to 4:30.
Yeah.
You said you have like Saturday and Saturday classes. How much longer do you go to school? And how long?
So we go 7:30 to 4:30.
So we go 7:30 to 4:30. We change the schedule every year. So this year, I think it's taking us 10 years to finally figure out what it's going to look like. So we go 7:30 to 4:30, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. On Wednesday, we get out at about 2. That's when we do a lot of professional development. Then we go Saturdays once a month, and we're touring around. We used to do 9:30 to 1, but we're probably going to do one of our campuses is doing 7:30 to 1 on Saturdays once a month. And so since we used to go when we first started, we used to do 3 Saturdays a month. We realized we want to keep people for 7 days. That kept people about So because we've cut back to just 1, I think we would probably do 7:30 to 1. Local public school, high school starts at all I remember was when I was teaching HISD, and you took out like restroom breaks and your ancillary class, which is like going to the library, and lunch. You actually had about 5 hours to actually teach. And so, do the math. If you have 5 hours to teach and you have kids coming in 3 grade levels behind, it's like almost humanly impossible to catch up. So that extra time for us in the first couple years is designed to make sure the kids are up to grade level, because by 8th grade, we want our kids taking 2/3 of the classes for high school credit. When they're coming into us, on average, a couple grade levels behind, we're basically hitting 4 years in 2. And so we need extra time to be able to do that.
So you're doing more hours than private schools and suburban schools that you kind of like. So when at the beginning of your presentation, you said if these students are given the same resources and opportunities as others, will they achieve the same? Aren't you really trying to give them more opportunities and resources than others?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I guess it would depend on the school. I think about some of the private schools in Houston, St. John's, Kincaid. These schools are, those kids are traveling the world in the summertime. So hey, if those kids are traveling the world in the summertime, we want our kids to travel the world. Those kids are doing college visits, doing service, getting access to see great people speaking when they come to Houston. So that's what we want to do. So I think, if you're only measuring it on the resource of time, then maybe so. But even as we get into high school, like our juniors and seniors don't have to stay that time. Most of them actually can't get off campus anyway, but we like to at least do a lot of the campus days, and 9th and 10th grade, a lot of the extra time is enrichment. The school day really ends around here, and now ends around 3:45. So it's just, it's a lot of the after school stuff that you would do at school. We just made it part of the school day and told everybody they have to. Outside of school, there are a lot of enrichment opportunities.
So investigation of occupational resources not include simply what people would normally classify as being part of the school, but also extends into things that happen outside of school.
Outside of school, and then a lot of enrichment opportunities that a school may offer, but only 20% of the kids are really taking advantage of. We want to offer those things and basically force 100%.
One of our graduates are not coming in 6th grade.
Yeah, 10th grade's about it. We have in the past taken juniors and seniors for pretty special circumstances. One of our graduation requirements is the kids have to get into a 4-year college or to graduate. So we don't give them a diploma unless they get into a 4-year. So, if you're taking a kid into the junior or senior who hasn't been exposed to a lot of things our kids have been exposed to, you're almost giving that kid a disservice by bringing them in. Now, we've had kids who said, "Look, I know I'm supposed to be a junior, but I want to be here. I'll go back to 8th or 9th grade," and they'll do that voluntarily on their own. And so we've done that. We have taken, if it's a junior or senior, we feel like can come in and run with the kids that have been there since 6th grade. Then we've taken.
We like to characterize each other's friends. What I mean by that is, when we first left the district, there's a lot of
I would say we like to characterize each other's frenemies. What I mean by that is, when we first left the district, there was a lot more of the me part that was friend. But over time, it's gotten much more collaborative. And I think the role that I think we play in Houston, and what I think charter schools play in general, is I like to think about, and you guys are probably too appreciate this, but there was a time when the post office was even worse than it is right now in terms of customer service, where it was just god awful bad. And for those of you that are my age, maybe a little bit older, something happened. It was called FedEx and UPS, right? So FedEx and UPS came into business, and there was a time when the post office swore up and down they could not deliver packages overnight, and they just swore it could not happen. Well, guess what? FedEx and UPS got to a certain size, and what did the post office figure out? They figured out how to do next day, right? So I think that's the role that we want to play to the school district. We're not going to deliver everybody's mail. We're not going to serve 200,000 kids in Houston. But if we can get to a certain size, and we think that size is about 10,000 students, then we can play the role of FedEx and UPS. And if we can open up 13 or 14 schools in 13 or 14 different low-income communities where you have Hispanics and African Americans and Asian low-income kids, so it doesn't get sort of written off as, well, this is a Hispanic thing or whatever, then you reach a point where the district has to change. And they don't have a choice because two things are going to happen. You're already seeing in Houston, enrollment's going down in Houston ISD because we're there, KIP is there, we have other charter groups there that are growing. I mean, there's a million unused feet, there's a million square feet of unused space in HISD right now, classroom space, because people are just leaving to go to charge. Good charge. You know, some people think that's bad, and you know, it drains. I think that's awesome because at some point, you know, everyone there is going to have to wake up and recognize that. And what we're trying to do before it gets real politically charged and we get this big target hit on our back, we want to extend the olive. So start opening schools inside this building. So this campus that we just opened up is inside an HISD school. We're collaborating with them. We're going to share best practices. You know, the best practices they may share with us or what not to do. We're still going to learn something from me. So, you know, it's that sort of, you know, back and forth that we hope we can start to inject now as we start to grow so that we're seen as contributing to the solution and not just someone who's stuck in the resources. Here and then here and then probably it's open enrollment, so you can call up and fill out a registration form over the phone. You can come to an information session. You can fill one out online. You go to schools and have kids sign up a sheet. It's like a sheet this big. It goes into a pillowcase in December. We pull out 120 names. That's the Saturday. So we tried to eliminate. It used to not be that way. We used to do interviews, talk to kids, and make kids' parents come up on Saturday. And what we recognized was by doing that, we're probably unintentionally creating a filter for families that we really want to serve. I mean, if you're making those kids get up with their parents on Saturday, come up to the school or even get in the lottery, that's a barrier. We want to try and remove every single barrier we possibly can so that we can remove every single argument we possibly can about why our kids are doing well. So we've created, this is the first year we're doing this, where there's 5 different ways to get in the lottery. You just pull the name out. We've always done just pull the name out. Other easier ways to get into the so it's open.
So freshman, how many years have you graduated senior?
7 classes.
Okay, you mentioned you have now a handful of alumni now teaching. What are some other outcomes, other professions that you've seen your graduates do post college? The ones that finish college, do you have statistics about their enrollment in graduate programs, professional programs, other professions in general?
Right. So the first 3 classes that we graduated were pretty small. The class of 05 was the first class that started in the 6th grade and went all the way through. And in our class, like this year, we'll graduate 90. So that's going to be about the size. So we have about 300 alumni right now total. Of that 300, 25 have actually made it through, graduated from college. And the rest are either still in school. So just to give you a sense, 87% of that 300 has either graduated from college or are still enrolled in school. So of that 25 is finished, 5 are teaching with us. One's working in New York with actually with Wachovia Bank. She's up on the management track with Wachovia. We have another one who is works with Amy. So a couple in the financial services industry. We have 3 in graduate school, and then the others I'm not sure. One's a policeman in Houston. She's back in the police academy. A lot of kids. So it kind of rotates. I mean, what's encouraging is that even the guys. So we have a student who's at AIM Investments. Another one works for Cemex, which is like medicine. She's back up at school, on Saturdays working with kids tutoring. A lot of the kids who, even though they may not be teaching it yet, are still trying to figure out a way to either get involved through the school or through other service organizations in their city, or even if they're not listening. One of the things we're trying to launch right now is how do we take advantage of that as that group grows and really leverage the impact that group can have. Because right now it's not super organized, but it's also a small number of kids. So trying to figure out as we grow that, how we can channel it. And really, it starts with making it attractive to come back to Houston. Because Houston's, when you come to Nashville, a place like, Palo Alto for 4 years, Houston doesn't look so cool. And so for a lot of our kids, it's, making sure they even want to come back. Houston's not a pretty place to live. So we want to make sure that we're creating opportunities for them where it's attractive to come back and work in the city.
I had a chance to come out to visit you a couple years ago and see Robert and his
That's right.
Amazing what you guys are doing. It truly inspirational to me. That's sort of an education policy person. My question for you is sort of on a more national policy level. Houston, Texas is a real sort of unique place for school policy. I was at the Austin State Museum on Saturday, actually. And it's just amazing the entrepreneurial spirit of Texas.
Yep.
You go upstairs and you see all the oil derricks that were all over Houston and all over like Sweetwater. It's just like, it's amazing. The entrepreneurial spirit, the competitive spirit in Texas, which allows for a lot of this sort of charter school reform. So my question for you is, A, what is your goal for sort of education policy nationally? B, what are some of the obstacles that you see us facing as a nation when it comes to sort of the local, state, and federal level? And how do we leverage the nation?
You guys, I should have known you, Vanderbilt. So let's start with national. So we've it's funny, like we'll get phone calls from people and say, hey, we want 3 yeses in Phoenix, Arizona. And I wish it were that simple. So we're really focused on trying to build something out in Houston. And I think the reason being is because we think that can have national implications. And if you really step back and look at what we're doing, we're creating a school system. It's a school district, and it's designed to serve a certain type of kid in a certain community. But we have a home office now, and we have a central team of 13 people. Hopefully we're I'm not going to come back in 5 years and tell you that we're so bloated bureaucracy, but we're growing out a school system, and so I think what I hope we can, the implications that can be that once we prove this out in Houston, that other charter groups around the country, or even other school systems, can really learn from the things that I think we're doing right, some of the lessons that we've learned up here, and know that this isn't just like a fluke or an anomaly, that you can actually build a high-performing school system. And it may take starting from scratch. Like, what's going on in New Orleans right now, I'm not maybe familiar with it, but they basically blew up the system, which in a lot of cases is exactly what needs to happen. You just need to take the TNT to the school district and start over, because it's so entrenched that to try and turn it's going to take generations, and we don't have that much time. And so in New Orleans, it's completely charged. The whole district is charged. But what you're seeing there is if they can get the quality piece down and right, consistent, I think that that's sort of an even one level up of what it is we're trying to do with UC, which is again building out a system. So I think there's some national money that we hope to do after we finish what we're doing at Houston. We're actually looking at New Orleans right now as a possibility. I fully expect us to be going to other places, and not to just do one school, to do another system of schools in another place. So I think that's one. Barriers, money and people. Money in terms of financing, so can we go out and find $12.5 million enough times over to do enough of this to get to UPS and size? I don't know. There's foundations betting big dollars on this, but there's a lot of us out there with our hands out the money, and you can't do this without some sort of private money. So we're really trying to go back to the state and get that $1,500 gap closed so that we are funded at the same rate as a local public school, along with some sort of facility allotment for kids based on performance, as we only wanted to hear if our schools are performing, so we can go out and build schools without having to raise every penny. people. So there's two parts to that. One, people working in the system, they're going to come in through TFA and other avenues to work in our schools. And there's also a lot of people who are barriers to change. I mean, the teacher meetings are an absolute barrier to informed education. If I've upset anybody in this room, I apologize, but that's how it feels. So, and watching it firsthand, I'm in a place where the unions don't even have that much power. And it's still, a complete disaster. Sort of these things that you have to argue over. So that's one. I think there's a lot of folks, thought leaders, policy people who really believe that poverty is just such this huge intractable problem that you can't even get your arms around it. So why bother pouring more money into education? And I'll give you a quick example. So Gallup does a poll every year, and they poll folks on, why do you think schools in the United States stink so bad? And John Q. Public Eye, there's three answers. One, the kids don't care. Two, the parents don't care. And three, low expectations. So that's what most folks would say if you ask them why public education is so bad. Well, the same poll is given to TFA core members when they finish after the 2 years. And the top three answers, I can't remember the total, but the top two answers are quality of the teachers, quality of the school leader. So what? Well, the so what is that we can get those two things right. So your lever question, if we can get those two things right, we can move the dial in neighborhoods where people love to say, well, it's poverty, the parents are poor, and they just throw their hands up in the air, and the conversation stops. And that's a dangerous prevailing ideology that I hope if you don't get anything else out of tonight, that's just plain not true. That if you can get the teacher quality right in the schools, and even more important than that, the leadership quality right in the schools, we can not only change schools, but we can change leaders. And I think that's, there's a lot of hope in that, there's a lot of work in that, but I honestly believe, and those of you that are board members, I think I'm wrong, please stay up. But I truly believe that's the case. So to me, the lever is principles. We can, take HIC for example. There's 300 schools in HIC, right? And I would say probably, and there's probably, 15,000 teachers, right? So if you take that 300, and that's a pretty manageable number of people. Let's say we'll give them the benefit out. Let's say half of them are good. So now you're talking about 150 people that you need to switch out and make some changes that have a big impact on the system. Because it's just like a coach, right? Any good NCAA football team, why are they good? They recruit the best players, right? If you can recruit the best players, you can be an idiot on the sideline in the games, right? So if you get a great principal in the seat, they're going to go out and they're going to find the top teachers to work in their school. When you create that competitive force among schools, now it's sort of an attractive thing. People are going to come recruit me to teach me. Wow, that's a lot different than the way it works right now. And so, to me, if we can get that school leadership part right, then I think we can have a huge rippling effect on quality teaching and quality.
One more question.
And hopefully when they come to the right rules. We have a development team of 4 people right now. They're full-time job. All they do from the time they wake up to the time they go to bed is figure out how foundations, corporations, and high net worth individuals are going to part with their money. And hopefully when they part with it, they're going to write it's a yes trust. We've raised in the last 3 years about $35 million. And we need about another 100. We don't get legislation. So you can see, as great as that is, it's a drop in the bucket for what's necessary to really kind of have the impact of these people out there. But it's just a lot of county payment. I spend a good chunk of my time on that. And it's just a lot of putting your salesman hat on and it's fun. It's also competing with a lot of great things. There's a lot of great schools out there. There's other nonprofits. The environment's becoming, when I was in college, that was sort of the issue is you're now starting to kind of make its way back. So you're competing with a lot of you're competing with higher ed. David Weekly in Houston, Texas, wrote some big, that $1 million campaign that Dan Wilkins did. A lot of that money came from Houston. you're competing with higher ed too. So there's a lot of people out there.
If anyone has any other questions,
great work.
He'll be around for a little bit afterwards.
It's tough. Organizations tend to make it, and the ones who don't. That's how it should be. One more. Okay.
If anyone has any other questions, he'll be around for a little bit afterwards if anybody wants to come talk. But otherwise.
First sort of inaugural date, so I hope that I did